Hello class, welcome to the next episode of our class lectures. So some of the things that I'm noticing in your papers, the biggest thing I think is having an anchor, a thesis, a main idea. And where that thesis comes from is not just any idea that you might have in your head, but it's really examining the rhetorical situation. So the rhetorical situation, and I'm going to be using the OWL at Purdue's online writing lab to go through some of these ideas because they may be new to you or this may be a refresher. So the idea of the rhetorical situation is that there's a text, the way that you're communicating your ideas. And when we were talking about voice thread is a different method. It's a different way to communicate a text. It's still a text, even if it's a video, even if it's an audio recording, because there are words involved and there's a communicated message. So the text changes based on whether we can see people. So the fact that you can see me and that I'm communicating with you. The text is not only what I'm communicating verbally through my words, but also what you see. So the text is the actual instance or piece of communication. The author is the person who's either talking or communicating that piece of information. So if you're talking about a politician, the author can be somebody else who wrote the speech for the politician. So then the politician may ad-lib some of their own ideas. But typically in a class, you're the author. So the audience, the recipient of the communication, is your instructor. So what's the most important piece for you to consider when you are writing? The most important piece to consider is typically what is the assignment. So you can only see the assignment instructions here on the Denby. So you are writing an analytical review about an actor or director, an analytical review. So you're analyzing his acting and directing. Not his life, not his personal life, and not anything that really happened to him unless you can tie that to his acting and directing, or her acting and directing. So this should be a thorough, well-cited discussion in which you follow the example in the book. You look at other people's ideas and you differentiate them from your own, meaning this is what I think and this is what these other people think. So if you haven't done those pieces, you're missing part of this assignment. And so what I'll need you to do is to rewrite it or correct it or go through it with the Writing Center. You can email it to the Writing Center, I believe, at UIA. There are different things that you can do. But find somebody who can help you with your writing if you're not getting these pieces. Have your own ideas and clarify them. Do the research before you do the writing. Many of the pieces that I'm reading look like you're looking at the research and you're reading things online and you're writing it as you go. And that is called taking notes. You're taking notes for something that you will later write when you find common themes and ideas that you can bridge together. The gap here, when you have a free-flowing sort of slew of ideas. So I'm looking for all those. So I'm your audience. I am the receiver of what you're writing. So if I look back at this assignment, and I see that you needed to pay attention to this and you needed to read the original article and you're not giving a full discussion of the directing and acting, then you're missing the assignment. So if you're missing the assignment, you will fail the assignment. Next, explore only one actor turned director and you have these choices. Once you've made your approved choice, explore that actor director's history, find themes and patterns in their acting and directing. You had to find these before you began. So before you begin writing your paper, you should be essentially creating a tree. So a tree outline looks a little bit something like this. We have these, here I'm going to be talking about the origin of life. And then I'm going to be basing off of this, I'm going to be supporting the origin of life with all of these ideas. And I have, before I began my paper, made sure that I clarified what I was doing. And so it's clear throughout that this is what I'm going to be talking about. So somewhere early in the paper, I needed to have clarified where I was going. It's important for you to know that you have this obligation. You have to have one idea that you're supporting through different ideas. So you can't just sort of come off with with an idea and not tell me where you're going to be going and exactly what you're going to be supporting, the idea you're supporting throughout your essay. So one thing that you're going to be doing when you write an essay is you're going to be coming up with general ideas, kind of like you do when you're doing research, and then you have to narrow it down. But somewhere very early on, you have to have a specific thesis. Otherwise, you can't support them with different stories, examples, statistics, ideas, reasoning. You have to start with an outline. Your outline can be as simple as saying, okay, this is what I'm going to prove. And then you can write one sentence for everything that you're going to prove, how you're going to show that in your papers. So I'm going to say Francis Ford Coppola is this amazing producer, screenwriter, film director. He's not an actor, really, so I wouldn't have chosen him, so you can't choose him. So I'm going to be talking about him. So I'm going to look at all of the work that he's done, and maybe some of it I've seen, and some of it I have to read about. So I'm reading about his successes, and then I'm going to find a common theme. So what is the common theme in his, and if he were an actor-director, in his acting and directing? And some of you have done this and did it really well, and some of you didn't start out with an idea. So if you don't start out with an idea, then you miss part of this assignment, and it's going to fail the test. And as we go on, the meter is growing higher and higher. If you're not watching the videos of the class lectures and you're not following along and doing what you need to do, I'm going to have to grade you based on what I know that I've given you. So if your APA and your document setup are not correct, then I'm going to grade you down, and I'm going to tell you why. So what I need for you to do is to step up a bit to look at these ideas. So the purpose is, what is the purpose that you're communicating this information to me? You're communicating this information to give me an idea of what you think and what you know that other people think. So you're entering a dialogue, a conversation that's already happening, and adding your own 2 cents to it, and making a common theme and writing about that and supporting that. So, and then there's a setting. So the time, place, and environment surrounding the communication. That's considering the fact that this is a college paper and that it's an online environment, and how much information that you need to give me. So that I have a dream speech by Martin Luther King. There's a text. It's a 17-minute speech. The author is, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. The audience was varied, but 200,000 or more people that heard him speak in person. But also, he really talked to lawmakers and citizens everywhere in America. He wanted to talk to the movers and shakers. So the reason why, he had a purpose. His purpose was to convince Americans to embrace racial equality and to further strengthen resolve of those already involved in the civil rights movement. So the initial setting for this speech was this time, 1963. And so you had to consider everything that was happening then, and so did he. His speech is an example of a rhetorical situation that is much bigger than its text and its audience. The thesis statement must be something that people could say, I don't agree with that. And that's where you jump in and prove yourself right, and you prove them wrong. So a non-debatable thesis is pollution's bad for the environment. Okay, yes. Then we're done having a conversation, and then it's not very interesting. So you have to have something that is debatable. At least 25% of the federal budget should be spent on limiting pollution. That's debatable. People would definitely debate with that. So when you're talking about an actor or director, you could say, this actor-director had some strengths, and these were their greatest strengths in all of their films. These were some of their weaknesses in their films. You could be talking about how they did a great job with one part, the dialogue. They did a bad part with another part of it, which was their films were too long and boring. If they're writing the films, screenplays. Or if you're talking about their acting, they had one part of their acting where they could act well, and another part where they just really stink. You have to have these kinds of strong opinions, and that's why we did a review, so that you could do that. So when we have another debatable thesis sentence is, America's anti-pollution efforts should focus on privately owned cars. So the thesis needs to be narrowed down to something really specific. I could write an entire paper about how Ben Affleck had more weaknesses than 5 other directors in a certain part of the way that he directed. So I would have to do a little research behind him doing that, and I would have to kind of find those themes and look for them. So I want to narrow it down because I want to be able to prove it out of my paper. And if I don't prove it out of my paper, I don't have anything to talk about. And then I'm just going to be saying, this is true about this person, this is true about this person, this is true about this person. Make sure that you are clear and that you follow logic and that you're supporting your writing. The last thing that I want to broach with you is that when you have a quote and your quote is this long, this is forcing your audience to read an article that you, the writer, should have broken down. You can explain part of that quote, use part of the quote that's really unique to the writer, and then explain what you're talking about, why you're using that quote. The writing that's done by you should balance the writing done by another person. So it's okay to quote, but be very, very sure that you are balancing that writing with what they say and what you say. And that before you do that, you've introduced what you're talking about. So you make a claim. Say something bold. This is a little warning that every essay that you write in here, every piece of writing in every text is expected to follow what I've given you in the videos and what I've told you so far. There's an APA section in your book, and you're expected to use that APA section. It is your job to know APA. It is not my job to teach you things that are clear in your textbook. So I have gone over references are alphabetical by last name of the author, comma, space, first letter of their name. That they're left justified with a hanging indent. The only thing centered is the references word. That there's a title page. That there's a references page. That everything else is double spaced. And this is the writing convention that is standard for college writing. So this will be a benefit to you throughout your college career. Thank you. Have a great day.